Hello and welcome back to the Underhand Free Throw. So we're getting closer to play-in time. In our last video we talked about the Western Conference teams, and now it's time to go over the Eastern Conference teams. It's not quite as close and competitive as a race. There's not as many players involved in this game, but it still is going to come down to the wire in the East, and there are still a few teams fighting over those last couple of play-in spots. So in the Eastern Conference, who is there near the bottom of the standings that is still trying to scrap and claw their way into the playoffs, and who might drop out? Today, me and my co-host Ian are going to talk about that in this video. Well, let's do the Eastern Conference really quick. We won't spend too long on this because I think the play-in race in the Eastern Conference is a lot less exciting than the play-in race on the Western Conference. Unless you're a believer on the Magic going on some crazy streak. It's really between the Bulls and the Wizards with who's going to make that last spot.
Yeah, but these teams, in terms of actually making it into the playoffs, getting it coming out of that play-in bracket, I think there's a lot more variability there. But yeah, Washington's been solid for a while. The Pacers just got Tyrese Halliburton back. Everyone's written off the Pacers because they've been bad for a while, but they were bad mostly because Tyrese Halliburton was injured. So it's not out of the question that they have a little surge. And then the Magic have just been getting better all season. The one thing I want to say about the East, comparing it to the West, all the teams in the West have maybe a more exciting higher end. It's more exciting to imagine what the Pelicans or the Lakers could be, versus the sort of more established mediocrity of the Raptors or the Hawks. But to look at the East now and see Toronto and Atlanta and Washington and all these teams fighting to get in the playoffs. The East really has come a long way. I was looking back at some old Eastern Conference just playoff standings, who grabbed the 7th and the 8th seed. And you're just looking at a 38 win Brook Lopez led Nets team and Al Jefferson Bobcats team, Monta Ellis, Ersan Ilyasova Bucks team, Andre Drummond leading the Pistons into the playoffs.
Speaking of the Pistons, that Blake Griffin's last great season, where he snuck in, and Blake was really good, but the Pistons didn't really have anyone else.
They're playing Cleveland, I think, right? They got
playoff team.
Yeah. Was Tobias Harris on that team, or was he on because the Pistons made 2 random first round appearances?
Yeah, I think it was Marcus Morris, Blake Griffin, Tobias
Harris.
Harris.
Definitely Marcus Morris.
I don't remember who else was on that team.
Yeah. I have a vague memory of sitting in Wayne Gretzky's sports bar in downtown Toronto watching a Pistons Cleveland playoff game. It was kind of sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, just I think all these teams are still kind of good. Even people take a crap on Washington, but Bradley Beal, Kristaps Porzingis, Kyle Kuzma, they've got some interesting defensive and offensive role players. They're not bad. They're not a bad team, but they're a lot. I think they're better than some of the Washington teams that used to make the playoffs in terms of just all around solidness. And Atlanta's a monster offense that's still just trying to figure it out. We'll see if Quinn Snyder can work a little bit of magic. And it's coming to who comes in this late to coach a team. You don't see that often. Taking over a team right before they go in their final little playoff push.
Well, the writing was on the wall for so long. You kind of got to wonder. What's up with the decision making in the organization when it's so clear a coaching change was needed earlier in the year, or something was needed.
I feel 20 games into the season, it was already becoming a thing.
Yeah.
Brooklyn's also Brooklyn could fall. They're in the 6th seed right now. I think New York and above is a playoff lock right now. I think New York's been so good.
The Knicks have been so good lately.
Yeah, I love they're even fun. They're fun to watch play for the first time. The first time since that random year where the Carmelo Anthony team got a whole bunch of veterans on them, and they had Rasheed Wallace and Jason Kidd and Tyson Chandler was there. That was a pretty fun Knicks team.
Pablo
this is the
Prigioni.
most fun. Yeah, absolutely. The sneak. Jalen Brunson is great. I think they've got. I think Josh Hart as a depth piece has been super functional there. And they don't have it makes they can actually take RJ Barrett off the floor if things are, not going well for him. I love Quentin Grimes. Julius Randle as an ensemble piece is a player I actually sort of like. I don't like all of the decisions he makes, but
he's kind of recovered this year. He's been better. The effort play to play has been a lot better. There's less like hanging the head and sulking after he takes a 18-foot turnaround jumper and bricks it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm back in on Julius Randle.
I think a decent offense with options can live with some of his poor shot selection. Where when the offense was his poor shot selection, that was super miserable to watch. But and then some of their other play, like Emmanuel Quickly has been like really good this year. Like,
Yeah.
and not in a way that I expected. I kind of thought of him as sort of like what Bones Highland was this year, but he's been good on defense, and he's been like, just crafty and finding ways to impact the game. So, on the margins rather than just sort of like as an on-ball scorer. So I like seeing that. I always like Isaiah Hartenstein. He's not having a good season, but like is still a fun backup center. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, like deep, pretty solid team that is, competent on both ends and actually plays reasonably good offense.
It is kind of a shame that the top four in the East are so good, because it would be fun to
Yeah.
see New York advance in the playoffs, like win a single playoff round. I think they're good enough to make a playoff round interesting. I have a hard time seeing them beat anyone in the first round unless the Cleveland Cavaliers fourth quarter, offensive woes just become a real issue. But, everyone in the top four is just so good and so talented.
And there's I'm sorry, New York fans, but Tibbs is getting out coached by anyone. Yeah, like
Yeah.
he like, what we were talking about.
Even Doc Rivers.
Doc Rivers 100% is out coaching Tibbs in the play. That would be fun. That matchup can happen, right? We just need Philly's got a tough schedule. They could fall to 4. Oh, let's get Doc Rivers versus Tibbs. That is fun. Sign me up for that. We can just contrast their two preferred helpless poses when the game's getting out of hand. They both love to spread the arms, and Tibb likes to sort of yell, and both of them like to get the eyebrows going crazy the whole time. That would they deserve each other in a first round playoff, and then one of them actually gets to win, which would be cool for them.
I love when things aren't going well for the Knicks. Not because I'm against the Knicks or anything, but it's just really fun to watch Tibbs' facial expressions alternate between confused and incredulous.
Yeah. I think that Doc Rivers is a better playoff coach than Tom Thibodeau. I think Doc Rivers gets out coached by strong playoff adjusting coaches, by the coaches that are more proactive than him. But Tibbs is the least proactive playoff coach that exists. So I think he makes Doc look like an innovator. So.
How do you feel about Quinn Snyder as a playoff adjuster? That's the other guy that may be in the playoffs that I have some serious questions about.
He did invent that, the way to guard James Harden.
Mm-hmm.
In a way the league copied. He invented that in the playoffs. I think they were they start early in Quinn's career in the playoffs. They just played against teams they had no shot against. You're talking about the dynastic Warriors, the 2018 Rockets, and then later into the team had become so broken and flawed that I didn't see where the answer was, just in terms of what was really going on there defensively.
You did have that middle period where they lost in the 3-1 comeback to the Nuggets in the 2020 playoffs. Where
it was in the bubble.
Yeah, and Quinn did not have a lot of answers offensively once the Nuggets figured out how to defend that Jokic, put Jokic in a pick and roll that the Jazz were really exploiting to such great effect. Once the Nuggets figured out how to adjust against that, the Jazz kind of just were Donovan Mitchell, take 17 pull-up mid-range jumpers a game and hope that's good enough.
Yeah, Jamal Murray going absolutely nuclear in that series too was a strange series. And then next year they lost to the Mavericks without Luka Doncic in the first round. But then again, but it was the
roster construction was so poor, it's hard to blame the coach for all of that.
I feel like they showed up kind of, brought a knife to the gunfight sort of thing. It's still one of those funny things that Utah team went into the offseason before that and still were we don't need any switchy wings. We're actually fine. Like, like it didn't even seem like they sniffed around. Like they went into that season just kind of like, well, we already know how to beat you. Like the whole league knows how to beat you, and you didn't change anything. And you're just like, let us do it one more time. It's like, all right, here's Jalen Brunson. like here's a Luka Doncic-less Mavs, and like, anyways, just sort of. So I mean, yeah, I don't rank Quinn really high or low. I think there's been some good and bad moments, and not all the bad Utah Jazz moments are things I chalk up to coaching. But I mean, maybe like there's a decent chance we, get to see Quinn Snyder coach against like the Celtics or the Bucks soon. I don't like that Atlanta team very much, but there's still a good chance they might make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Hawks are in. I think the Raptors are in. They're kind of on the rise. And we're talking about play-in, here. I'm not necessarily saying 6th seed. But, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Nets fall out of the playoffs. I mean, the little I've seen of the Nets post-trade. Mikhail had that one, 45-point night, right? But other than that, I think the Nets really reveal how important or how essential having, like, a high-level playmaker is to like run a functional offense in the NBA. And
I think that's true.
It's not that.
But I also think like this kind of roster is not the thing you put together on the fly. Like I think if you took this exact roster and gave it a training camp and worked out a really specific system that was going to try to generate the sort of offense that they needed to be successful, again, kind of like the Toronto Raptors are this year, like kind of similar style of team where they don't have that lead playmaker really. I just don't think you just slap that group of guys together and expect the offense to make any kind of sense, like beyond but there's also like a chance they coalesce and discover some sort of identity, but right now it's just like a collection of defensive wings, which is fun, but not like, I don't know. We'll see. There's some games left. It wouldn't be crazy if the Nets just need to like grab a hold of anything and hold on to it for dear life, and they'll at least stay in the play-in. So they got a chance.
Yeah. I mean, I know this point has been talked to death, but this would be such a great team for like prime Ben Simmons to run point for. Surround him with 4 awesome switchable defensive players and, 3 guys who can space the floor at all times plus a lob threat. That's the ideal matchup for like that dream scenario a few seasons ago where we're like, what if you separated Simmons and Embiid and gave him his team that was like suited for him? Like this is that team,
and he's on the bench.
He's not suited for it at this point.
A lot of these teams that we were just talking about are also all the teams that have the hardest schedule in the East going down the stretch. Atlanta, Toronto, Brooklyn, and New York all have pretty brutal schedules. Miami's not far behind. Indiana and Chicago and Washington are the teams that are actually going to have the easier time going down the stretch, which is like funny because I feel like those teams are objectively worse than the ones that we talked about. But again, when things are this close, like I don't think it's necessarily like the best teams that are going to grab these spots. It's going to come down to just sort of like luck of the draw. Another interesting thing is that Cleveland has the easiest remaining schedule in the East and Philadelphia has the hardest. So it's a good
Cleveland
bet that
might finish the 3 seed.
Yeah. Cleveland's my pick in the East. I like, or not my pick. Like they're my audacious pick. Like if I want to be spicy and fun, I'm like Cleveland's coming out of the East. They're going to beat Boston or Milwaukee. I just think they're sneaky really good. There's still some, I think they've got some holes in the roster, but I think that defense is going to be scary in the playoffs. And I think they've got another level of offense to unlock with those 2 terrifyingly good offensive guards in the backcourt. So I can't wait to see them in the playoffs for the first time.
And Dean Wade officially taking over the Kevin Love role.
Yeah. He hasn't gotten back into the starting lineup though, has he?
No.
He's now officially right. The Kevin Love role being the backup power forward. And Kevin Love starting for Miami?
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, this doesn't mean Kevin Love is back. This is worrisome for Miami.
Yeah, I thought it was a very worrisome thing for Miami. I'm just like, this guy, his thumb's still broken. He still can't shoot. Like, what are you putting him on the...
He wants to play. The guy wants to play.
And you know, with Kyle Lowry just sort of like, you know, barely clinging to life, like maybe they just need a veteran decision maker out there at this point, sort of thing. But it does feel like the Heat are just like, you got Bam and Butler, but I don't really know what else you got. Like, we already know that Hero is a solvable offensive player in the playoffs, so I'm not like, you know, counting on that in a big way. I don't know. Miami, like I said before, just keep the night going. One more drink, one more snort of Coke. Like, just never, you know, the sun might be coming up, Miami. That doesn't mean you have to go home.
You know what? I think my closing thought is this. I think the Magic make a run and leapfrog over the Pacers, Wizards, and Bulls for that 10 seed.
Love it. Would love to see it. I'm totally down. Magic.
I picked the Magic to finish 10th in the East at the start of the season when we did our predictions pod, and I'm in on the Fultz-assance. I'm in on Paolo Caro continuing to get better as the season goes on, making better decisions with the basketball. I'm down on this defense. I just think it's a solid team that's capable of playing slightly above 500 basketball, and I think the few teams above them are going to play slightly below 500 basketball the rest of the way, and they have a chance of getting there. I
also think that if in the last couple of games it looked like Paolo's maybe kind of coming out of that, like he hit the rookie wall at one point, has been pretty bad for a while, but he's put together a couple of strong games, and if he can figure it out, like the team's very structurally flawed. They only play guards that can shoot, and that can't shoot, and they just brought back Michael Carter-Williams to just double down on that approach. But there's a lot going on in this roster. I think Wendell Carter Jr. looks awesome on defense. I just think their front court is so good, and if they want to, I guess they're not on OKC's level in terms of how they performed this season, but everything I said about OKC and why I want to see them sneak into the playoffs is I feel the same way about Orlando in the East. That's much more interesting to me than watching Washington or Chicago.
Yeah.
In a play-in game, or it would be the most Washington thing ever to sneak into the playoffs and, you know, get swept in the first round, but still could happen.
And you know what? I'm so encouraged by Jalen Suggs' season this year. You know, obviously, as a Gonzaga fan, I really want to see Jalen Suggs succeed, and, you know, not sure if I see all-star potential or anything, but he's such a game record offensively and with his energy. And it doesn't always end well for him, but he just adds a whole nother component to the game. You know, I was watching a Magic game the other night, and Jalen Suggs got a couple of steals and just pushed the ball in transition, and, you know, missed both of the layups that he attempted because he still can't finish at the rim. But he is really an impact defensive player. You know, I think
he's very disruptive.
His athleticism is starting to become real. He's had so many nagging injuries these first couple of years. He just didn't look like the same level of athlete early in the year, but he's starting to look more like the guy that we saw at Gonzaga as of late. And he's developed from a horrific 3-point shooter into just a bad one. You know, still not a good shooter.
Progress.
It's a massive improvement over where he was last year. I think he's 31% from 3 for the season. Not great, but it's a big improvement. So that's encouraging.
I mean, Kyle Lowry shot 25% from 3 in his second NBA season, and 24% the year after that. And he's always the player I've compared Suggs to. Suggs is more athletic, but similar kind of disruptive, feisty, versatile player. And so again, Kyle Lowry looked like a non-offensive entity for the first several years of his career. He'd play in the pick and roll a little bit, but he couldn't shoot. But he was just a crafty guy that you still like to have in your rotation. And I don't see why that's not in the cards for Jalen Suggs. And then if he just one day in his 6th year in the league learns how to shoot, they're building a statue of you somewhere.
Well, Jalen Suggs doesn't have great touch. So that's kind of the one worrying thing about him and his future development. Because a lot of those, he can get to the rim, but then he just misses from point blank range. I'm a little bit worried about Jalen Suggs ever becoming a great offensive player, but the hope is that he's good enough where he doesn't kill you offensively, and then he's just kind of a menace on the other side of the floor.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. The Magic are fun to watch. get to the play-in, Magic. We're rooting for you here at the underhand free throw.
So that is all for our Eastern Conference play-in talk. If you want to see our Western Conference play-in talk, you can see that video here. Or you can click on our podcast down in the description where we go into much greater detail on both of the play-in races. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time on the Underhand Free Throw.